Welcome to this live video feed. Whoa. I'm just going to bring Jared, if you're on, brother, you can come on now. And I'm inviting you, and I've sent an invite to you. Okay. Easier. Can everybody hear me, by the way?
Yes, I'm here, brother.
Yes. Very good. Good to have you on here, brother.
Perfect.
These aren't working.
We've got traction.
One. We have some form of traction. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. It's not going to work. Okay. Cool. How are you?
Brother, I'm great. I'm really, really good. I had just did a 24-hour fast with a group of people in our Limitless Love and Leadership group. And I just went and had some beautiful Japanese food then, and I'm just sort of just laying myself to the ground for a second because I've been busy all day. But
Nice.
Nevertheless, I'm here and I'm present now and ready to go as always.
Very good. So I was just seeing a video that I saw yesterday or the day before around sex robots and sex dolls, male sex dolls. Looking at the future of how we relate, how we connect, and it was really interesting that many of these dolls, I think it's maybe 150 to 200, have already been shipped out, and they're very realistic. They're very lifelike. And there's female dolls as well, and they're all made to order. So each one is unique, like us as humans, right? Unique. They're not like factory assembled per se. Each one is made differently to spec and so forth. And they're inseminated with artificial intelligence. They're robots. And, the story they're selling is that they're replacing essentially, human contact. And I thought to myself, wow, like, where are we going with this? Zoe had some interesting comments actually earlier. And then, how are you? Thank you for being here. Some really interesting comments around, like where are we going as a society? How are we growing as a society, and how are we actually, how are we redefining what it means to relate to each other and to engage in conscious relationships, and how do we define that? It's an interesting place where we find ourselves, not only as men, but as people in general, as a humanity, as a collective community, as a collective family.
100%.
Yeah, it's a very interesting place, and I'm wondering, like with we're looking at certain socioeconomic, sociocultural structures. We're looking at poverty. We're looking at people becoming fearful of sexually transmitted diseases. People becoming less adept in communicating and connecting with each other. Is it an easy path to take to engage in a robot per se? Like in artificial intelligence. Because they look fairly real. Like they look fairly real for all accounts. And what's happening in the brain when this is occurring? This is really interesting. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
This is interesting because it's a beautiful curveball for the beginning of the conversation. And what's interesting about the world moving forward at the moment is like there's so many of us that have suppressed our emotions for so long, and that it's shifting in the sense that people are starting to become now more in touch with their emotions. Like the conscious community, the people that are doing the work on themselves and are really peeling back the layers, are starting to actually become more sensitive and more emotional and make peace with that, because that's what makes you relatable and easier to connect with, because you seem more human. So with that, like when I put the thought of a robot, like a sex robot, and myself in the same sentence, it just makes me think to myself, I'm like, I just spent so much time becoming more sensitive and more in tune and being able to connect deeper, especially with my partner, Abby. That to me just goes against the grain of everything I've been doing, which is interesting. The world is evolving so quickly, and there's like the conscious aspect, then there's the AI aspect, which I feel going in two different directions. So I think that what is evolving people and relationships in today's day and age is the ability to be vulnerable and to connect and to see a place in which you can go, wow, this person is just like me. So I feel that if we're going too much into the AI, the robotic world, we're creating disconnect. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, yeah. Disconnect being something that's occurring rapidly in our world, and it's not about, because I don't want to blame we can use technology.
Mhm.
I mean, pen and paper is a technology. That's
Exactly.
that's a, like anything's a technology. Toilets are technology.
Yeah.
Um, there are many non-digital devices and apparatus that's technology per se, but I feel that we're moving in a space where we're allowing technology to distract us, where it's meant to connect us and bond us and bring us together in more intimate ways. And we're allowing technology to almost distract us from our purpose, distract us. And what is that purpose? That purpose is to grow. That purpose is to transcend limitation per se, to transcend rigidity, to transcend tension, and to begin to understand who we truly are as people. And we're looking at, we've got to think about this for a moment. Like, this is really, really interesting. Like, and that's an interesting point that Zoe's just made. Like, even a vibrator is numbing women out from feeling. And I know there's various different camps on this as well, right? And I get that. And then there's a conversation around what about moderation, but where do we draw that line? And part of it's an individual choice, part of it is a collective choice. But where do we draw that line? Like, to literally be sexually intimate. I mean, can you even be sexually intimate with a robot? What does that even actually mean? Like, are we talking about interspecies? I mean, robots aren't even a species, but let's just somehow simplify this. We're talking about interspecies sexual relating. I mean, I don't know. What does that actually look like? But it's convoluted. Like, it's where do we stop? And it's not. I don't want to make this harsh judgment on it, because I'm still trying to figure out and understand where humanity's heading. Is like, how are we innovating? Is this actual innovation, or are we devolving ourselves per se? But what does this actually mean for our collective psyche, like who we are and why we are doing this, why we're acting this way? And of course, it's a small portion of the community, the global community or society, that is opting for artificial contact. But what does that actually mean? What is that small portion of society actually representing? And I like what you said earlier as well, by the way, about the work that you've been doing, the deep work that you've been doing, and the consciousness work, the expansiveness, the expansion work, right?
Yeah.
And then to go into something like that, is that actually expanding, or are you losing yourself again?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line. I'm just, when you were saying all of that, what was coming to mind was two things, like the slingshot effect. So when something gets to the point where it's the brink of disconnection, that's when we start to really fight for connection. And in social media, in self-development, one of the most common conversations at the moment is this whole thing around everyone's on their devices. And what you said about technology, like even a spear back in 2,000 years ago as a weapon was still technology. When it was brought out, that was technology, and it was used for war, and it was made out of trees or whatever else from the ground, so and stones. And it's still just technology. Technology is like another word for a tool of evolution, basically, that supports us in accomplishing a task, whether it's writing an email or stabbing a wild pig, So it's the same thing. But I'm just thinking of this. I've been saying a lot. Polarity gives us clarity. Experiencing what we don't want gives us so much clarity on what we actually do want to experience in our life. And it goes in you can go so much deeper in terms of like every action has an equal opposite reaction, Newton's law. So it's like, I feel as if, how do I put this? I feel as if the more that this sort of stuff happens, the more that the people that are more conscious and aware that are into feeling are going to rise up as well alongside it. And I think what might potentially happen is we'll have a division. I hope not, but I'd love everyone to be on the same page and to have a global community, because that's where I believe I'd love to see us head, as a global community, because the way that people are going with sermons, and like these people like Michael Beckwith and Judah Smith that are doing like massive sermons with like 10,000 people. And they've got like a Muslim, Buddhist, they've got, Christians, Jews, all in one place, all speaking one language and speaking to the many, not speaking to, division and separation. They're creating, connection across the board. So, I feel like there's always going to be something trying to separate us. But then what makes us human is connection. What reminds us who we are is that unconditional love and connection. You know, the experience we have when we touch another person, you know, that vibration when we touch somebody has an effect on them every single time, whether we know them or not. Whether it's our partner or it's someone we've just met, there's always some sort of emotion that's triggered by the way when we touch them. So, you know, the more that I am evolving and the more I'm seeing the people around me, my clients, whoever might be evolving, it's making us more sensitive, which is how we actually fully experience life. Especially coming from where I was, you know, I used to be relatively numb. Like I was a nice guy, I believe, and I was quite happy, so I thought, but I wasn't fully experiencing life. I was avoiding sadness and fear and anger, and therefore I never truly experienced the heights of joy and fulfillment. You know, so I think everything has its place, and I think people will always choose their side, but I believe what I feel is coming through me at the moment with the development of AI and everything that's happening in the robotic world, I feel like alongside that is growing this deeper connection, you know, and I think that hopefully it grows intertwined and we can all live in harmony. That's what I'd love to see happen, I suppose. Because yeah, the way that, based on how I've experienced myself now, and based on the people that I'm beginning to connect with, like yourself, that are very conscious, based on those things and experiencing myself in a place of this wholeness and this lack of separation. You know, when we spoke last week, I was just like, dude, we're all in this sort of same divine mission. You know, there's no real competition in a sense. It's more a sense of we're just brothers of the same cause. They're speaking the same language, essentially, you know. So experiencing those feelings and watching other people unfold in that same sort of space, it's making me go, this is what makes us truly human, like the definition of human. Able to access and tap into any emotion and to have I think what's beautiful about, you know, becoming more sensitive tools you acquire, the faster you can move through something. So yeah, this is a big conversation. This is going to be interesting to see what the people that are watching, what
It's
they
massive,
think,
man.
because I think that
Yeah.
we're going to have to wait and see what actually unfolds. And in the meantime, we get to do what we keep doing. So
That's another balance point. It's observing what's unfolding in the greater collective, but also assuming a very powerful responsibility for our own actions and choosing consciously through what we're observing in our environment, through observing perhaps what we don't like or what we don't resonate with, or what's not really feeding our soul, or what's not aligning with our values and aligning with our purposefulness per se, and then choosing very openly, very consciously to make choices about who do I want to be. And you know, when we view that, you know, you mentioned earlier that polarity equates to clarity. I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah, of course.
Essentially, if we allow to anything to transpire in our field of reality, in our environment, how we choose to interact with that becomes our choice, and that's what we become responsible for. And in that responsibility, we become deeply empowered. And I like that notion of you know, connection. And connection is something that we can have in so many ways. Like you and I right now, and everybody on this live feed, and everybody that will watch this live feed is connecting through digital means. So we're utilizing digital technology, we're utilizing innovations and advancements in the way we connect to deepen our connection, to spread our reach. You know, you go back a few hundred years ago, not even that, a couple of hundred years ago, 300 years ago, you would you know, if and when I'm not sure when Telegram began, but you know, you could send something nationally with a horse and a courier, and it would take days and weeks.
Yeah.
You know, like it's everything's instant now. It's light speed. So with that flux of accessibility comes, you know, deep integration of information that we're receiving as well. And sometimes we become overwhelmed and we think, well, you know, fuck it, like it's just too difficult. I need to I need to shift, and I need to not be so overwhelmed. So I'll revert to what a few comments have been made previously about numbing, about distraction,
Yeah, of course.
around ignorance. You know, ignoring our truth, ignoring what we're really capable of, because it requires effort. And that's right, Zoe. Instant gratification. We live in a society of instant gratification.
Exactly.
And how do we bypass that? Because the social psychology demonstrates that when we're able to delay that gratification, so much, we gain so much more value from that. And it's the same for the way we connect, the way we relate, the way we receive pleasure, the way we give pleasure, how we define pleasure. And I'm not just speaking to sexual or physical pleasure. I'm talking to emotional satisfaction. I'm talking about fulfillment. I'm talking about meaning. There's a number of different aspects to pleasure per se, and the landscape's changing dramatically. Like people are waking up, and I play in this space, and I have been for some time, especially with with healthy masculinity and men and so forth. And observing how men are changing deeply. Like I've got a men's group that I run, Reclaim Your Kingdom, and it's a private men's group. And watching these men and observing these men and looking at and listening and feeling what it is they're saying and what it is they want and what they desire. They desire what everybody else desires, what every human sentient being on this earth desires, and that is belongingness, connectedness, intimacy, clarity, authenticity, truth. Men are no different per se. It's that we've been, we've created a rod for our own back, and this is a massive conversation. So, people that are watching, and also, by the way, like Jared and I haven't scripted this in any capacity. We just said let's just roll and flow, and let's keep it broad and speak to consciously relating. That's pretty much what we're doing.
Basically, yeah.
So this is a massive, very deep. See, this is cool. So Tara says, where are these men at, right? And this is not part of the problem. And this is not to you, Tara, but this is that we think there's this shortage of conscious men. And you can define conscious how you want. Okay, it can be a subjective definition. I can define it for you later if you like. But let's just keep it pretty simple for now. We can say, well, where are all the conscious men, right? There's a heap of conscious men. They are everywhere. Conscious men are everywhere. Conscious human beings are everywhere. I was in Miami last year, and I've been to Miami a few times.
Yep.
And people say, "Oh, Miami, it's drugs, it's superficial, it's this." So first of all, I don't take drugs. Number one, and it's superficial, and it's this and it's that. And it's like, I went there, I didn't party. I met shamans. I spent time with beautifully connected people that, whether they're into plant medicines or social evolution of society, or whether they're into expanding their own consciousness. And I spent, probably nearly a month there in that region and in other regions around there. And it was all about that. So, your vibe attracts your tribe, so to speak.
Exactly.
And that's a beautiful saying. But what you're focusing on, what you choose to pay attention to, you draw into your life, or you'll notice more. And that's interesting, because if we keep saying, where are all these conscious people, or why is this happening, or why is that happening, we compartmentalize too much. Like we overdo it, because we're stuck in this sense of fear. Like we're so scared that we have to really retract and constrict ourselves in life, and not throw ourselves in life, because if we do that, then we run the risk of being vulnerable, or being open, or being wounded, whatever it may be. It becomes very, very challenging for us to ever grow and ever actually meet and connect people. And fear is an interesting thing. It's an interesting paradigm, and it grows and it festers, and it lives in the unconscious realm. We don't know what we don't know, right? So
the subconscious mind is very powerful, and it's responsible for so much. Yeah,
very, very powerful. Yeah, it's responsible for so much of what we do. Call it 95%, 90%. It's a large portion of who we are, how we act in the world, our belief systems, our models of reality, everything that we experience, the way we understand, the way we give love, the way we receive love and care and endearment, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's the nuances and the subtleties of our behavior. Unless we actually take the time to look at all that, and like in a state of deep awareness, how do we ever know who we are or who we have a capacity to be. I find that very
I,
interesting, Jared. Yeah.
I like this the way this is going, because you're talking about that before in regards to, like, there's what sounds like is like in the comment or in the idea around where are they all at, or I can't find them. It's like there's an expectation attached to it. What I find in this conversation, and we didn't go down the rabbit hole of defining what a conscious person is, because it's a very, very deep thing to really, really define, and it can shift. But what I find when I experience people is like a really conscious person is very, very grounded, and they're not trying to attach a meaning to everything in their life. When they're extreme, that's my experience. Someone that's extremely conscious is like they're not trying to always explain everything. They're more accepting and seeing, and then adjusting themselves to flow with life, rather than going, oh, well, this happens, so that means this, and that happens, so that means this. And they're trying to, connect the dots all the time, constantly. It's like, I feel as if someone being conscious is more about them actually surrendering and just being present to what's actually going on. And with that, taking full ownership of self, like taking full ownership of how they show up in the world across the board. Because as you said, your vibe attracts your tribe. And, one thing that I know for certain, because I keep on experiencing constantly, is whatever I embody, I experience in everybody else. Even whatever I embody, I experience in my clients. It's always so connected, and it's like this this magnet force that we are dealing with. And I think that, one thing that back to Michael Beckwith says so powerfully, is he talks about how, what makes manifestation so powerful is when you say what it is, like embody the feeling of what you want to experience, but then let go of attachment, let go of everything else, let go of expectation of when or where or how it's going to happen or how it's going to look, but embody the feeling, and then work towards embodying and becoming a vibrational match to that which you want to experience in your life. So we're always constantly in our life attracting exactly who we're being, and that's the one thing we can't escape unless we sit there and go, holy shit, I get to accept in this moment that I'm experiencing people around me like this and this. They're all a mirror reflection of you. Sometimes they're amplified, but a lot of the time they're a mirror reflection of where you're at in your life and what you're showing up as today, right now. Constantly a mirror of you. So, even for me personally, I used to notice that I used to always pay attention to it when a guy had a big ego. Like, I'd make a big fuss about it. Whereas now when a guy's got a big ego, I'm like, oh, that's cool, awesome. And I suppose I've learned to humble myself and not get triggered by it, because I realize that if it's bothering me, it's something that's unresolved within me that I need to look at. And I get to sit with, and I get to really sit there and go, okay, cool. What am I not paying attention to? This is probably the most common question I ask myself. If I'm looking at my outside environment, it doesn't reflect what I want to experience. I'm like, what am I not paying attention to? That question got me through severe anxiety and depression. Like, what am I not actually paying attention to that's present in my life in this moment? So, taking full ownership, full responsibility, and really owning everything that's present in your life, every single thing. I feel like that is when someone can truly, start to even talk about the whole conscious idea, because I feel as if we're all born conscious and everybody is conscious. I just think that what we're dealing with is multiple filters that everything gets processed through before we actually act or speak or anything else, So I believe we are all conscious. It's more a matter of us letting go of limiting beliefs, self-sabotaging thought patterns, whatever it might be. And then you get to a place where your channel's a bit clearer. That way, whatever you transmit through your voice or through your actions is more of that of the divine, as they say. So this is a deep rabbit hole we could go down for hours, I feel. I know that if me and you get going, we could talk for like 6 hours if we had to. And I'm sure that you'll have a great time listening to us as well. But yeah, it isn't that early. So, but yeah, man. So I've got a question for you, actually. I've got a question for you.
Yeah, go on.
Because if I can be really, really honest, I sent you a voice note 10 days ago, whatever it was, and I acknowledged you, and I want to share with everyone I said about you. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I watched a live video of yours. I've seen quite a few of them. I've seen you with a few of my friends in their live feeds, and I'm like, wow, this guy's showing up everywhere. It's like a sign sort of thing. And then I'm like, looking at some of your content and looking at, how you're showing up in your content and your profile and everything else. And I'm like, what attracted me to connecting with you more was the level of embodiment you have, you know, and that's what's really interesting for me. Like I'm looking at people that I want to connect with. I'm like, I like to surround myself with people that are really deeply embodied, you know, because I feel much like myself when we talk about living a great life or, you know, living an exceptional life, as I would say, it's not just one thing. It's not just spiritual practice. It's everything. It's everything you do. It's the way you treat yourself. It's the relationship you have with yourself and with food and with exercise and with the way you conduct yourself in conversation. I think it's a collective thing, you know. So I had to acknowledge you when I sent you that voice note, because I'm just like, dude, you're showing up, you know, authentically and consistently. And the biggest thing that comes to mind when I think about you is embodiment. And I think that, you know, myself and Abby had this conversation recently about, you know, the people that are in the community. And I want to ask you, so do you ever experiment with, or have you ever experimented with plant medicine before?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, quite a decent. I mean, decent amount. It's a relative term. It's comparative, you know, but
Yeah.
and very relative. But yeah, absolutely, you know. And thank you, and honoring you, brother, for your compliments, and likewise to you as well. You know, your embodiment is a beautiful thing, and again, you know, the more we can open ourselves up to embodiment, the more we can open ourselves up to that integrity, that authenticity. You know, like many of us, when I say us, I'm talking about the collective family. We talk a lot about, we speak to certain words, like there's buzzwords and there's buzz terms in the world that we use that we relate to, and they're very important to connect to these buzz terms. And a lot of the time, um, we don't really understand what they mean. You know, like for me, like the way I define authenticity is being in integrity. The inner world and the outer world is matching, and that inner world, you know, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the belief systems, the models of reality, what we actually know, are matching the way we relate to others, the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we act, the way that we speak.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful for us. And you know, you touched on a few really pertinent points earlier around connection and around expression and around you know, being in the world and learning and growing from who we are, and coming back into consciousness, so delayering ourselves, because we coming back into wholeness, which has been for me personally my journey as well, and obviously yours as well, which is a beautiful thing. And it's we remove ourselves so much from wholeness, and we feel fractured and we feel fragmented in our being, and we feel broken. It's when we're broken and we hit rock bottom perhaps multiple times, as I'm sure you have, and I can say for myself, I definitely have.
Yeah.
That we can actually begin to come into wholeness. And for me, plant medicine is a tool. It's a technology as well.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
for lack of a better term, it's a tech, right? And it's a tool for us to expand ourselves. And it's interesting. I started very late with my plant medicine journey. So I did, before I started plant medicines. I did work in the realm of um, how can I put it, without substances, without any external means, just working with the mind, working with the body, you know, working with breath, working with the self, without any external substances.
Yeah.
For and went really deep in that space first. Work with a few different people and shamans and practitioners and just and guides, and really allowed myself to go deep into that place first. And then I began to experience plant medicines and in various forms. And I felt I established a far deeper grounding for doing so, as opposed to just immersing into plant medicines without having done any deep psycho-emotional work of myself or spiritual work outside of that realm.
Yeah.
And the thing is with plant medicines, plant medicine is just, it's a tool, but not only is it just a tool, it's a reflection on who you are and who you can be. And it's an insight, it's a spark of insight. And what happens is most of the time people get caught in that loop, that spark, and they just remain there. And they're just, okay, next weekend I'm on ayahuasca. The next weekend I'm on San Pedro. And the next weekend I'm on Harpe. And the next weekend I'm doing Cambo. And it doesn't stop. Like, where does it stop? You know, and sometimes it doesn't have to stop for some time, but we have to integrate, and we have to do the work. We have to. That's where the hard work is done. It's done in, or the effort is exerted. The difficulty and the challenge, the confrontation, the breakthroughs, the deep breakthroughs are actually done when you integrate, when you take the learning, when you take the snippets of wisdom, when you be with them, when you engage in practices that integrate the brain, vertical, top down, bottom up integration,
Yep.
and left, right, and spherical integration. And when we do the spiritual work, when we give context to these experiences, these visions, these beautiful visions that we've had, this is where the work is done. And this is where plant medicines can be so powerful. We have to understand that you go back 100, 200, 300 years ago, let alone a few thousand years ago, when plant medicines were being used, we didn't have the toxins in our environment. We didn't have the physical limitations that we have in our environment in terms of our waterways being polluted, plastics everywhere. We didn't have the socio-cultural, socio-economic complexities that we have now. We didn't have 7.5 billion people and what that actually means to our collective psyche. We didn't have these issues per se. So that changes completely the way we related to these plant medicines. Completely. If you talk to someone, this is really interesting for our viewers. What's his name? His name's just eluded me. Oh, it will come back to me. He's a bioethicist and a biologist. He's Terence McKenna. Sorry, I lost the name. If you're familiar with Terence McKenna, yeah. So Terence McKenna, he says, in a nutshell, I'm paraphrasing and condensing, but he says that we've evolved the way we have consciously because of plant medicines. And he actually goes and he links our evolution through plant medicine, through the different epochs, the geocycles of life and our ecological cycles of the last, like 20,000 years, and how we've actually moved through that. So it's phenomenal, right? So plant medicines can be a powerful journey for so many people. And I don't think it's for everybody, because some people need to exercise their demons first before they go into such deep intensity of plant medicine, because it can be very, very confronting. I mean, man, I've been on the journey of 5-MeO DMT or Bufa, and that is the strongest medicine you can have. Now, prior to that, I've done it, and that was only very recently that I did that. I've done a lot of deep work for years in my own space, and it really, again, I'm only touching the surface of what I've done personally, and I've only been doing it for a few years. I mean, yes, from a very young age, I've been very inquisitive and exploring, and I've done deep work, but I've never gone too deep because fears have been holding me back. And it wasn't until a few years ago where I released those fears, became non-attached to that, and literally surrendered and became present to the option or the possibility of death, physical death, and what that actually meant, and fully let go to that.
That's an interesting point.
I've had those.
That's an interesting point. The fear of death is big for all of us. Yeah, keep going.
Massive. But I've had that experience that I experienced with 5-MeO, and it's different for everybody, I'm sure, to some extent. Is I've experienced that before just with breath work. So I get so excited when I see you speak about breath work, and I hear you speak about breath work, biodynamic breath work, and I implement that with my clients as well, and the people that I work with. I'm very blessed to work. It's phenomenal, and I've done it myself. I do it for myself as well. Better to always have someone do it for you, or with you, sorry. But I've experienced very similar, not at the intensity of 5-MeO, but the essence of it, same in breath work, without any poison, without any powerful substance, without anything. So we are capable of so much, and people want, again, that quick fix mentality. I'll have a plant medicine, or I'll have a Panadol, or I'll have surgery, or I'll do this. And we just sometimes need to slow the fuck down because life's way too busy as it is. And when we slow down, we grow and we expand ourselves.
I love that. And so I want to take it back to what you said. Sorry to cut you off, but there was something that I really want to really, really bring presence to something you said before. And I love how you segued into it, how you gave it a breakdown. And to our conversation about embodiment, and what makes the difference when you do a plant medicine and the experience you have with it is what you've done leading up to it. Because, I've only started last year myself, and the reason why I asked is because it tends to pull back a lot of the sheets that we see the world as, and you see the world for what it really is when you do plant medicine. It's the easiest way to explain it, basically. It pulls down all of the sheets of perception, and you just see the world as it truly is, And the most effective thing you can do after doing any ceremony, whether it's ayahuasca or San Pedro or anything, is that process leading up to it and leading out of it. And having been the same, spent so many years doing breath work, meditation, yoga, being in my body, feeling into my emotions, letting go of shit, letting go of this, letting go of whatever was serving me, like actual normal, like party drugs, like overcoming all of that first, and then, letting go of my attachment and addiction to that, and then going, okay, cool, I think I'm ready. Because plant medicines will call you. It's not something you force yourself to go do because everyone's doing it. It's more something you go, I think I'm actually feeling like I'm ready for this. And you take them incrementally. I did 5 ceremonies last year. I think Cambo, Harpe, Aya, mushrooms, and San Pedro, but all at different times for the first time, and just really, really allowed Cambo to really integrate and felt into the shifts I experienced. Then it was only like 2 months later, I picked the next thing, and it's like you really need to leave that space for the medicine to give you the wisdom, or let you give you that clearing, or let go of that stuff that doesn't serve you, and then be in that body until you go and try and do something else. Because what I'm experiencing of people that have bad trips, so to speak, is the common trend with all those people is they've done like ayahuasca 5 times in 2 months or something, which I'm like, first of all, that's disrespecting the medicine. The medicine is a powerful tool. We don't need to go and abuse it. It's not like a party drug. It's meant to give you some gifts, some lessons, and some wisdom. And then you get to sit with that and find out how that can integrate into who you are as a person every single day. So, steeping yourself in deep practice and through meditation and ritual prior to breath work, and actually prior to plant medicine, and having that breathwork background and then coming into plant medicine is interesting, because you felt some of the sensations before. It's just that the plant medicine takes you there fast. But back to what you were saying about breathwork giving you a similar experience. When we did that breathwork retreat, biodynamic breathwork retreat in Bali for 12 days. Every night I would go out after breathing, because we breathe once a day, and get facilitate somebody else, and also have someone hold space for you whilst you breathe. And every single night when I'd walk out to dinner, I'd look at the stars, and it was like I was on ayahuasca, because we'd be breathing for an hour and a half most days, and you come outside and you're because it's releasing so much 5-MeO and so much DMT, you walk out into outside and you look at the stars, and it's like, this is like a journey. What the hell? But it was every single night, so I got to really experience that in a deeper sense than before, through my natural body and what I can actually produce internally. And I think that a few of my friends are quite big into it, and they facilitate in their shamans, etc. And it's starting to take over Hollywood, because it is the fast track to enlightenment, so to speak. And like being enlightened or being conscious these days is like a cool, trendy thing to be. It's like, oh yeah, he's conscious, he's not conscious. It's like, who cares? It's not even, you can't gauge or measure that. That's just people trying to put a label on something to make them feel better about their life, But I feel like I really, really relate and connect what you said in regards to plant medicine and respecting it, and then having the personal grounding and ritual to actually process and integrate, embody, and then move forward. Even with our program Become that we were launching, we pushed it back by a week, because emotionally and spiritually what we experienced in Bali was so deep and transformational that if I had said, yeah, we'll do it starting Monday just gone, I wasn't ready. Whereas now I'm starting to feel more grounded, and I'm like, okay, cool, I'm in my body, I'm back, I'm present, I understand what I went through, and I understand how it relates to my life and how it's useful now for me to move forward. So and touch on the last thing you said about there's no need to rush, life is so busy. That is so true. I think everyone needs to hear that regularly, because we try to always fast track everything. We're always trying to, what I do with my clients when it comes to like health coaching is I get them to focus on their health, not fat loss, because fat loss comes and goes. But when you're healthy, your gut is healthy, and you're functioning optimally, you're not going to put on excess weight. You're not going to carry around inflammation or anything else in your body. So it relates to everything else. It's focusing on something that's so much bigger than the surface thing that we see with our eyes first, or like straight off the bat. Focusing on deeper, it's like, okay, cool, you've done ayahuasca, but what out of that journey did you actually get out of that? What have you become after in that process of actually embodying that stuff? Because there's too many people that do the plant medicines and they get thrown back out into the world, and they get spat into the world with no structure or anything to do afterwards, and they find themselves experiencing worse anxiety and worse stress and worse everything, because they got all this information, they don't know what to do with it. And they experience themselves so open that all of a sudden...
Experience overwhelm.
Sorry?
They experience deep overwhelm.
Overwhelm, yeah, because they've experienced themselves in this open state where everything, they're sensitive to everything and they don't know what they're experiencing, So it's something that if people are watching this that haven't done it yet, it's something to take really seriously and to be patient with yourself. And, it's a beautiful tool, but as Steph said so well, it's like you want to embody some deeper stuff and work on yourself prior to just going, oh, let's go do ayahuasca, or, San Pedro is not as heavy. Cambo is quite intense, but, you want to really, really lean into it when you're actually ready for it, because they can be very intense. Like I'm
Absolutely.
very sensitive to medicines, period. So I take small doses, and I'll meditate every morning, and I'll have a visualization and leave my body. So, it's not as about having to do plant medicines. It's about connecting with yourself deeply first, and just really, really getting in tune with what's in here, what's in your heart, your intuition, and like really feeling that first, really knowing what that feels like, what that looks like, and experience that, and then go into the plant medicines. Because then I feel like there's more wholeness internally, like we spoke about before. So, but yeah,
there's a couple of interesting, and I resonate with what you're saying, brother. And I want to clarify something as well. Like, you go back into traditional shamanistic traditions, depending on which lineage, of course, the intensity in taking medicine was a beautiful thing. It was used as an exorcism, or as a clearing of the way and of the mind. But again, those circumstances were very different to what our circumstances are now, socio-culturally. And Nicola asked a very interesting question. For me, plant medicines aren't drugs. Yes, they are mind altering, absolutely, but they're not drugs. And yes, they do unleash creativity.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond all of that, okay, and yes, they do allow you to. It's not so much increasing creativity; it's accessing creativity. It's so you increase creativity by removing the blocks, or removing what hinders us, what hinders you in, or what inhibitions that you experience in everyday life. But beyond all of that, right? Beyond all of that, the reality is, if we don't want to really go deep and explore the wholeness of who we are, and if we don't really want to go deep and embrace everything that we are, in other words, the wholeness of who we are, the polarity of our being,
the shadow self.
plant medicines they're going to fucking hurt us. They're going to really hurt us. We're going to be stuck in a perpetual cycle of pain, like anything. That's why people try. Plant medicine is just being replaced with street drugs, as an example. If your intention isn't clear, and if you're not ready, or if you have not already faced the fullness of who you are, or at least working with your shadow self to some degree, the plant medicines, or any mind altering or being altering substances, are going to really affect you negatively, and they're going to hurt you deeply. So there's a lot to be said for doing the work and putting effort into exploring the darker, more fragmented parts of self. And we don't know what we don't know, so seek help, like seek guidance, explore, research, feel into your own being, take up transcendental meditation, take up yoga, take up movement, some form of movement, exercise, whatever it may be. Take up reading half an hour every day about subject matter that expands your mind and your awareness of self, whatever it may be, whether it be in the emotional realm, the psychological realm, the spiritual realm, traditional mystic traditions, whatever it may be. But begin to explore what's really important in your life, because otherwise plant medicines are going to hit you like a planet, very hard, and you're going to be deterred. And if you're not going to be deterred, you're going to be very put off and very fragile. And in that fragile state, guess what we usually do? We usually seek more ignorance. We usually seek more distraction, and it comes in any form. It could come in alcohol. It could come in rampant sex. It could come in workaholism. It could come in different drugs. It could come in keeping ourselves busy.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be really careful, really careful. This is not the way forward. The way forward for evolving our humanity and evolving our own selves is to begin to connect to everything that we are, and be okay with that, or at least have an intention to be okay with it. We may not be at the beginning, but have an intention to be okay with who we are. And freediving, that's really cool, actually, Amanda. Freediving is a beautiful art and practice that is liberates the mind as well in so many different ways.
Beautiful. Oh man. I love the level of depth.
Yeah, it's a beautiful conversation. You know, there's a great deal of access that exploring self gives us. And you know, we move through life and we wonder why doesn't life work for us, or what's holding us back, and you know, why do my relationships always suffer, or regularly suffer, and why am I triggered in relationships? Why am I even getting angry? And most people don't even ask these questions, by the way. So if you're asking these questions, that's a really powerful place to be. But you know, we have a feeling, we have like an embodied feeling of why life isn't working for us. And the reality is because we're choosing consciously and or unconsciously to ignore life. We're choosing to ignore the fullness of who we are. So how do we then show up for others? How do we then present ourselves to others? Are we inspiring others? Are we being a center point for awareness for others? Are we helping others grow? Are we growing ourselves? There's a lot of power in understanding this and understanding ourselves in context to who we truly have a capacity and a potential to be. And it's through the process of exploration, it's through the process of willingness to understand, to move. And you know, a few comments there is about mentioned laziness, and laziness is simply us not acting in accordance with our values, or rather, we don't take action in a certain area because it's not high on our priority list, it's not high on our values. So we consider ourselves lazy, but what we need to do, I shouldn't say we need to do, but what is very useful for us to take us to a place of clarity and happiness. Because, you know, like, you know, raise your hand if you don't like being happy. Everyone's putting their hand up. We all enjoy happiness. We all enjoy that connection, that bliss, that contentment. And to move in that space, we have to begin exploring who we are. We have to begin, you know, really wanting to know, well, what are we capable of? And if we ignore certain parts of ourselves, we also deny the best parts of ourselves as well. So there's that balancing act there. And this is what, I mean, I speak to, actually it's interesting, Jared, because I speak to this, I'm in Melbourne at the moment, I'm coming to Brisbane for a presentation on essentially what is wilderness therapy, you know, Spirit of the Mountains that I'm running, I'm promoting for next year, which is a beautiful program and journey. But I speak to very clearly, it's a 6-step cyclical process with respect to how to shift pain and how to transform from a place of being disconnected in life, and how we can, through this cycle, it's a repetitive cycle until we feel more grounded and more connected and more understanding of who we are, how to shift that. And I did that in my own practice unknowingly. And so it wasn't only until I reflected and was introspective on all of this that I figured out, wow, like I've been playing in this circle, and it's what saved me. It's what saved my life, bro. Like it really literally saved my life. And it's brought me to where I am today. So, you know, there's a lot to be said for deep diving into self, and there's a lot to be said for doing that at your own pace as well. You know, and when we do that, we cease to wonder why life isn't working for us, and we cease to embrace life when it isn't working for us as well. And we become less polarized, and we become more complete in our approach to life, which I think is really beautiful. And, you know, brother, I see that very much in you as well. You know, when I talk to you, when I look at you, when I hear you, I see that you know, transpiring in you, and there's a resonance there. You know, that's why we're obviously having this conversation, because there's a resonance there, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that.
100%. Yeah, man, and that's you know, I suppose that it's. I love doing the work on myself, and I love that some days are a struggle, you know, and people have this perception. It's like the idea of even just meditation on itself, you know. And I think that what people think it is and what it actually is are two different things, in the sense that, you know, for me that meditates regularly, some days I can drop straight in. Other days it'll take me 20 minutes and I'll get the shits. and I won't actually experience what meditation is supposed to be, you know. And this is the thing. Well, that's why things like yoga and meditation are called practice, not actually perfect, because you can't actually get them perfect. And there's no one bakes you a cake when you meditate for 20 minutes and have no thoughts. You know, no one ever does that for you. I thought they would, and then all of a sudden I got nothing. So, but it's the same in everything in life. You know, you're doing the work on yourself. This question gets raised a lot recently. It's like, can you truly heal yourself? I'm like, it's not really about healing yourself completely. It's about more, you know, diving into yourself and becoming aware of the inner workings of who you actually are, letting go of some stuff that doesn't serve you, that's playing out into your life, and then having some tools, you know, because for us to say, like, I mean, I was experiencing, like, I've been through severe anxiety, and I used to get really severe panic attacks. That was part of my spiritual awakening, and I overcame lots of it. But coming up into the breath work, before and afterwards and during, so much shit came back up. I'm like, what the fuck? I haven't experienced this in ages. Like, I was having, like, not panic attacks, but like real tightness in areas of my body, you know. And it's about having tools and things in your disposal to actually be able to move through these things faster, you know. So I think that, you know, people are always looking for the result constantly, as opposed to really paying attention to, and this really speaks on when you're slowing yourself down, who do you actually become in the process of you doing the daily rituals, the reading, and then going, I like that. I'm going to speak on that. I'm going to see how I can fit that into my life and see how I experience it afterwards, you know? So, excuse me, but there's this desire and need for people to rush to get to the finish line with no cake at the end of it, or no, you know, bottle of champagne. Brings us back to a place of grounded. You know, the more, my experience of people that are really enlightened or have done a lot of work on themselves, they tend to speak a lot less, you know, or they still speak, but they only use really effective language, and they start to really slow it down and just give you only what you need rather than the justification, I suppose. So this is good for me, because I feel as if in the past, and I'm still growing through this, I was the opposite. I used to over-justify and to try and create a result in the people around me, as opposed to just saying what was really in here in my heart and letting them connect to just that, you know, and really allowing myself to surrender to that, because your truth can be said in a matter of sentences. It doesn't need to be in all of these words that we all like to use, you know. And I think that what's evolving for all of us is really beautiful. And I love the way the world is shifting consciously, and how people are diving deeper into the work, and people want to know what meditation is. People want to do yoga. I've got friends of mine that were bodybuilders, that are still are bodybuilders, that want to do yoga. And I'm like, dude, I can teach you. Like, do you know what I mean? I love that that's actually happening, because it's showing that as the layers are getting broken down, and they're starting to see, this comment gets made to me a lot, because I was the guy that was, you know, had all the money, had all the hot girls, had the, you know, the really nice cars, lived in the flash houses, and, you know, traveled into Vegas and partied like a rock star. But now how they're experiencing me is success in a different way. You know, I as I've said famously in a few posts, I'm like, I experienced the same amount of fulfillment I would have, or more fulfillment, sitting on my back deck, being still for 20 minutes, as I would have being in a nightclub in Vegas with 15 girls around me. You know, and it's just, that to people can be so triggering, but that is the truth of my experience, you know. And I think that what's interesting is the people that have been through anxiety or depression or addiction or whatever it is, and that same person is standing on the other side going, hey, there's another way through this. There's another version of me that I have access to if I choose to do the work on myself. So it's not even about people giving you recognition or compliments. It's about what you get to embody on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's about who you're going to be internally. And what I can appreciate about the way that you deliver content, the way that you speak, is there's a deep level of wisdom in there. I can tell that there's a lot of experiences that you've had that have, and you're just basically, because I feel like you're someone that would read a lot, but it's almost as if you speak on what you've actually experienced rather than trying to always quote out of a book, so per se, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we paraphrase, all of us do that though. But in terms of like what you actually speak on, it's usually, it feels like for me when I watch your content, when I'm experiencing you now, it's like this is based on my actual experience. It's the reading of the book, loving the book, appreciating the content, and then for the next 2 months, finding how you can become that integrate that into your daily routine, or having conversations around the same topic to evoke a different perception on that, to then drive your knowledge and wisdom on something deeper again, And I feel that when I'm talking to you, I think that's why we resonate so much, because I'm like, I used to read so much. I've read, beyond 300 books, maybe more than that even. I don't even know. I can't keep count. But when people ask me how many books do I read, all that sort of stuff, I'm like, dude, honestly, you're better off reading 10 books and 10 really, really effective books that are aligned with where you want to go, and study them to the point where you can embody the work and it becomes entrenched in who you are. It takes some really, really effective scripts, old stuff too, as best as you can, like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. So stuff like that's old and deep and thousands of years old. And sit with that book and just be with that and really, really try and decipher and understand it, and then try and apply that into your life, instead of trying to do this. I've read 3 books this week, two this week, or I just go on, whatever that mentor box is and just get 15 minutes here and 15 minutes there. I'm like, it sounds great, but it doesn't get us anywhere, And that's why I believe I experienced my biggest breakdown. I thought I knew everything, but the disconnect that I was experiencing and why I experienced severe anxiety and depression was because I wasn't practicing enough of it. And I had the blessing of, being more conscious these days. It's like if I have this practice when I read something, or when I'm listening to somebody speak, or anything on that matter, anything that's self-development wise, or even a spiritual teacher, if I find my ego trying to say that, I know that, the next question that follows that is, do I practice that though? Because there's a very, very big difference in that. There's the, I know that. People will listen to, you send them a podcast and it's like, yeah, I know that. It's like, okay, cool. I love that you know that. But is that present right now in your life? Can you, if you gave me a snapshot into your life, is that who you're being right now? Or is there a deeper reason as to why I may have sent you that? So it's always relative. And we get to look at the same lessons over and over again, and to really, really, as we evolve, revisit the same topic, the same book, the same seminar, the same anything, and really, really go, okay, for me at 26, I experienced this. Now at 30 years old, how I'm experiencing it is completely different. Because I'm different. And now I'm taking another 15 perceptions I've developed and come with for over the years, and I'm bringing that into the mix of how I'm understanding this now. So I think the thing I'm grateful for now is I'm not addicted to drugs. I'm addicted to work. I didn't work on myself, but with the humility to be slow in that process and not trying to rush it. So
there's a lot to be said for slowing down. There's a lot to be said for, again, taking responsibility for all that we've passed through and all that we've moved through in life, and acknowledging that there's great wisdom and teachings and learning that can come from every experience that we've had and every experience that we share, and how then we can grow with that and from that, and begins us to connect to a deeper aspect and version of ourselves. And that's that constant growth. That's that perpetual cycle of becoming grander versions of ourselves, being able to surrender to the pain when the pain comes, being able to surrender to the beauty of life when the beauty comes, and there's beauty in everything. It's how we perceive the world. And being able to be present to what is in front of us and asking ourselves, how can we grow from every experience that we have, and not get caught in cycles of being attached to certain ways of being because it's all we've known. Because there's always another way if we want another way. And if there is the way that we're currently taking and walking now, the path that we're taking is no longer serving us, then we have an opportunity to create a new path for ourselves, albeit challenging, albeit immersing into the unknown and into the mystery of life, which can be very daunting and very painful. But there's always another way. And, the quickest way to change our state is to immerse ourselves in an environment that is conducive to that who we wish to be. And what that looks like varies for everybody. It could be physical. It's usually a combination of physical environment, our social circles, what we choose to listen to and be surrounded by, and align ourselves with practices and people and experiences and environments that are conducive to our health and our growth and our flourishment of self, but also that's in alignment with the person that we value, or that we perceive to value, that we haven't quite embodied yet. And embodiment and practice is a lifelong process. It always is. It's never ending. We're evergreen content. We are.
Yeah.
So whilst we're where there's a lot of value there's a great deal of value, infinite value in what we are for ever and ever and ever per se. We're also constantly up leveling and upgrading ourselves. That's just by the way we learn and move through the world. So there's a lot to be said for learning from our past experiences and learning who we are, and not being ashamed of that, and not burying ourselves in guilt and shame because of who we've been and some of the actions that we've taken. And I know I've spent many a year burying myself in guilt and shame and working through those very deep, confronting, perpetually unhealthy emotions, and how that's shaped my own life as well, and how I now relate empathetically and compassionately to myself, but also to others. It's an empowering place to be when we can shift from that place that's disempowering to a place that's empowering. So yeah, I'm definitely resonating with your journey, brother, on various levels, the details and the essence of it, and honouring that path for sure. And I'm just looking at the time as well. We've been going for an hour. Time flies when you're having fun. We must be.
Yeah, could have guessed that one.
Yeah, that's okay.
We'll have to just leave it at that and do another one. I think we'll have to just make time in the future.
Be awesome. That'll be wonderful. And hopefully I'll see you in Brisbane. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
That'll be great. It'll be great to connect. And thank you for your time, brother, and thank you to our audience as well. I hope you've all got something from this. I know I have. That's for sure.
Yeah, I have too. That's why I love this, because we all get to learn.
Yeah.
Never
learn and grow together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it, man. Well, appreciate it for you, man.
Thank you. Much appreciation and love to everybody. Jared, thank you for being here, brother. Really appreciate it. And lots of love to everybody. We'll speak again soon, beautiful people.
Peace out, guys. Cheers, brother.